Matty Fresh on the track up at State. And I'm bringing to you live my boys Alec and Nate. Tequila Ty, JNELLY and Dylan in the building. So kick it back, pour the drink. We chillin' because I'm boozing and betting and ballin' like I'm 2-6 in the blue kicks. Watch me move quick. Yeah, this the blueprint. So who's getting involved? Welcome into the show. This is Booze, Bets, and Ball, baby.
And welcome back to Booze, Bets, and Ball as we do our Penn State, Ohio preview on this Thursday afternoon. Outside of, unlike last week, I should say, this might be less about are they going to win and more about what's the score going to be. I don't know how you feel, Nate. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm not struggling about the fact if they're going to win or not. I'm more struggling about the fact, is this going to be like Villanova last year where some people left upset with the final score, or is it going to be like Idaho a couple years ago where, it was literally over
79-0.
Yeah.
I hope that's what it's about, right? I mean, I guess, nobody is going to be happy unless it's closer to Idaho than it was Villanova last year, I'm sure, right? Because Ohio football in 2021 was not a very good team. They were 3-9, including a loss to Duquesne. Not even FCS. I don't even think Duquesne has scholarships still, or at least they didn't when I was in college.
I don't think so.
So they are a bad team. They won last week against Florida Atlantic, who I think is also now drifting towards being a bad team too. So Penn State better come out and kind of put the smack down on them and cover. What's the spread right now?
It keeps moving. It started at, I think, 27, and then it dropped to like 24. And when I just looked, ESPN had it at 25.5. So.
Okay. So yeah, you're looking for a 28-point victory at least for people to feel comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think a lot of people all of a sudden got like worried about this game when Ohio beat FAU last year. I think maybe people's memories of FAU is like that year Kiffin was there or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't think they realized that's not really the same FAU that it was 5 years ago or whenever that was. So I don't think there's as much reason to be concerned as maybe people are. They gave up 38 to FAU too, and I think a lot of that was in garbage time. Kind of Ohio got out to a big lead and kind of let them back in the game there. Yeah, Florida Atlantic scored 21 in the fourth quarter. So I don't know what that says about if Ohio let their foot off the pedal a little, or if their defense, FAU, figured out something was bad with Ohio's defense and took advantage of it.
Yeah, there was a ton of offense in this game. It was like 470 yards each school. And I don't know quarter by quarter how the yards went, but yeah, Florida Atlantic scoring 21 in the fourth quarter, then maybe Ohio let them back into it, and you have something that's somewhat reminiscent of Penn State, Nebraska 2017, I guess, right?
Yeah, that was
right, where they got out to like a 40-point lead and then let them back in. But so this is an excellent case or an excellent opportunity for the offense to shine. If they're giving up 475 yards of total offense to the Owls, then you would think that Penn State should easily cover that, right? And Sean Clifford should have a field day. We should see Drew Aller again this week, and maybe even some of the other quarterbacks potentially, right? You want them to feast. You want them to absolutely go out there and destroy the Ohio Bobcats. And coincidentally, it is the 10-year anniversary nearly of the Ohio win against Penn State in 2012.
Yeah. A little revenge game here, I guess. I don't know. It might not feel that way, but to some people it would be one. If you go by the law of you get better every week, FAU scores 38, Penn State scores 35 at Purdue last week. You would think they clear 40. I mean, that would kind of be the normal thing to think here, I guess, if you go by the fact that you think they'll be better from week to week. And now some people talk about the fact that they might go a little stale with the offense with Auburn next week, and I could see that, but I still feel like if you run the same 6 to 7 passing plays, you still should be able to put up points on Ohio, who clearly doesn't have a good secondary.
Yeah. There was a really nice thread this week about from Hardcore Penn State. I forget their exact handle, and I apologize for that. But they basically broke down that, last week they ran the same variation of 3 or 4 different passing plays the whole game, right? Which was pretty interesting. And maybe you do that again, but like there's that's okay when you have a dominant number of athletes and you have like 4-star wide receivers and you have, a stable of running backs that should be able to really go crazy here. And you can run a very vanilla offense and still put up 40 plus points, right? And again, I think that's really the combination that you want to see this week, is that they pretty much dominate, while not really opening up the playbook too much. If they have to open up the playbook too much, right? Like if you see a lot of wildcat and things like that, or like trick plays, then something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. Last year, Ohio ranked 96th in FBS in scoring defense, allowing 30.3 points per game, right? So just to contrast that, Penn State, as you all know, was 17.3. So they were not a very good team last year. They appear to not have a really good defense this year. Maybe, some of that was garbage time, whatever. But I don't know. You just want to see the Penn State offense execute at a good clip and not make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's also going to come down to the fact that people are going to want to see them actually run the ball. I think when they were struggling to run the ball last year, everyone was like, okay, well, against Villanova, like it can't go wrong, right? And it still didn't look good against, an FCS team that doesn't really have scholarship defensive linemen all the time. So I think that's what everyone's looking for. I don't think they need an 100-yard rusher, because I think it's hard to get an 100-yard rusher when you have 3 running backs rotating each series. That's kind of hard to do unless someone breaks like a 70-yard one on one of their drives. But I think if the team itself runs for over 150, that's when I think you're pleased with it. The fact that they do this running back rotation is going to make that 100-yard rusher stat more overrated, I think. If they just had 1 or 2 guys that were going the whole game, I'd be like, that's kind of concerning. But because they do this, I think you have to throw that out the window. And if they get to somewhere between 150 and 200, you don't care who has what or how it gets there.
I would tend to agree with that. So you're talking about Villanova. Last year against Villanova, 34 attempts for 80 yards, 2.3 yards per carry, which is not very good. But like that was sandwiched sort of between, Auburn was also equally almost as bad. But against Ball State last year, they ran 48 times for 240 yards at 5 yards a carry, which is pretty good. And then, immediately after Villanova, 42 carries, 209 yards against Indiana, almost 5 yards there too. So like even last year, they kind of proved that they could do it occasionally. And I think everybody's a little bit gun shy about what they saw last week and thinking, oh, here we go again. But like you said, this Ohio defense should present itself a good opportunity for them to kind of break through here and do what they did to Ball State last year.
Yeah, Ohio only allowed 100 rushing yards last week to FAU. I don't know how much of that has to do with Ohio having a decent defensive line or the fact that FAU was down big and had to throw the ball the entire time.
I don't know. Sorry, a dog was scratching to come in. So sorry about that.
You're good.
You can cut that out. I didn't watch the game. I don't know if I could have watched the Ohio-Florida.
Yeah, I don't think it was on TV. No.
So, tough to tell. But well, let's see. Where were they last year, though? I think that's rush defense 2021. So the Ohio, 106th in rushing defense last year. They allowed almost 5 yards a carry last year, 4.85 yards a carry, and 193 yards per game. So unless they have a market improvement, Penn State should beat 5 yards a carry. I'd put the over under at 5, and I would take the over.
Yeah, I would hope that's the case, honestly. I think it's time they start to show something. I thought at times last week the offensive line did show some push, and maybe the hole was missed or the running back didn't hit it quick enough, and it kind of got swallowed up then. So hopefully they correct that. Those guys get to watch film from last week, see what they did right, see what they did wrong. Obviously, you're dealing with 2 out of the 3 running backs played in their first ever college game, so there's going to be some misses early. As long as they learn from it, is all you really ask for. So I think on that side of the ball, Penn State should be okay. If worst comes to worst and it still doesn't work, I mean, Clifford has an abundance of weapons to throw to against what was looks like a poor secondary. So I don't think the game will ever be in doubt, but I think we would like to see improvements from the running game.
I agree. So you come back to some of the issues of last week, and there was one play right around midfield where there was a gaping hole and nobody within like 10 yards of the handoff.
Yeah.
And Kevon Lee just kind of got chewed up for like 2-yard gain or something like that. Whereas it looked like that should have gone for a much bigger run. So, is he a little bit slower to accelerate than, some of a couple of the younger backs, or at least Nick Singleton? We'll see. But, getting guys in the right situations where they can excel and they have holes, you do want to see them break a couple of these things. Now he came back and had a 12-yarder later, which, as we discussed, is actually good compared to what we were doing last year. Joel Klatt made an interesting comment last week where you're running so much out of the shotgun, you don't give, like, you make Nick Singleton take the handoff flat-footed or like still, and then he's got to accelerate from there. And like he wanted to see getting Nick Singleton to run downhill, or some of the running backs to run downhill and get ahead of steam before they got the ball. And I think it will be an interesting thing to see if that changes at all. They did run more out of under center formations last week than probably you saw all of last year nearly. And, are they going to translate that into a little bit different run scheme going forward to give those guys a head start? That'll be a good thing to see potentially.
Yeah, that was even kind of a gripe some people had going back all the way to Saquon Barkley, that they never got a running start on their rushing attempts. I will say Singleton came from an offense in high school that was like all pitches, jet sweeps, stuff out in space where they just let his speed take over. I mean, we didn't really see a single play on a running play. Now there were a couple swing passes and stuff, which I wouldn't really count. But, maybe we see some plays this week, or maybe they're holding this back, where they're running pitches or outside tosses and stuff like that to get Singleton the ball outside of the tackles. I think eventually they're going to have to do that because his speed is just so good out in space. I think that's maybe something they're just holding back, that they don't want to put on film yet for Auburn and then Big Ten play, which is fine. I think if we don't see it in Auburn, then I'll start to be concerned that they just have no idea what they're doing with it.
Don't know how to use him.
Yeah.
They did run one jet sweep last week, and I think the first or second series to Parker Washington, which gained
4 yards.
Not bad, right? I mean, it's better than the average for a run. So for them, you want to see a little bit more of that, but allowing guys to get towards top speed before they have the ball and getting them in space, I think is spot on. Like where the need is, you can't just slam them into the back of a line that doesn't always allow the biggest holes. That worked for Saquon. As good as we want Nick Singleton to be, he hasn't proven yet that he's Saquon Barkley in college, right? So maybe he'll get there, and maybe he adapts to that, but pump the brakes a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. So on the other side of the ball, Penn State's defense, I think people see the 31 from Purdue and get a little concerned. They really gave up 24. Let's be honest, the 7 came on the pick 6, 24 on the road against probably the second best quarterback in the Big Ten. I think it's more than fine. It was definitely enough to win the game. And the way they played in the fourth quarter was encouraging, especially Chop Robinson. I went back last night, actually, and I'm watching the fourth quarter, and pretty much every play in the last 2 Purdue drives, he was at least pushing his man backwards, getting close to O'Connell, and then he finally got to him on that final play of the game. I think he's in for a bigger role this week, if not starts. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts. I think
over Tarburton.
I think they have some obligations to Tarburton as an older veteran player to keep him in the starting lineup, but I think Chop Robinson might outdo him in snap counts this week. I wouldn't be surprised by that. I think they're going to try to generate more pressure because, I mean, frankly, the two sacks they had last week came from like corner blitzes. So I think they want to see if they can get a little more pressure with their front 4. They did some interesting things at the end of the game last week. I know it was obvious passing downs, but it was Isaac, Robinson, Curtis Jacobs, the linebacker, and then Sutherland, the other linebacker, were the 4 blitzing, and then it was pretty much 7 DBs. So obviously everyone knew they were passing, but I'll be interested to see if they have some stuff like that. I think they also did kind of where they had 3 down linemen with Isaac Robinson and then Hakeem Beamon, the defensive tackle. So I think they might play with that again this week, see what works, see what doesn't. I think we'll see a lot of different defensive line packages this week.
Don't forget the goal line, the touchdown where Jair Brown was playing defensive end in a 3 or 4 point stance. So, yeah, let's avoid that in the future. So, I mean, the one gripe that I had last week, and going back, I don't care what Twitter calls us out for. I think like we were not that negative on the Penn State defense last week. The one place though that you want to see improvement, and again, it's because it is what Manny Diaz has done in and out or throughout his career, is exactly what you said, and that's get pressure, create negative plays for the offense. Last week it was only a couple of tackles for loss and a couple of sacks. It's about half of what you would expect from a Manny Diaz defense. Some of that is scheme of the offense and getting the ball out quick, et cetera, but still Purdue was very poor in that category last year. They gave up nearly the most tackle for loss and stats in the Big Ten last year. Mm-hmm. Ohio, 30th in the country in sacks allowed last year. So they, I guess, for how bad they were, they apparently had a pretty decent offensive line. And then in tackles for loss allowed, they were, again, kind of in the top 20. Yeah, 24th in tackles for loss allowed. So they did not give up a lot of negative plays last year. We will see, like you'd like to see a good Penn State line led by now it appears Chop Robinson. You'd like to see Adisa Isaac, shake some of the rust off. He hadn't played a game since 2020, I guess, right? Or so. So he's going to get better over time. He'll catch up to the speed of the game. And maybe this is the week. This is a good week to allow them to kind of break through. And now, that defensive line that we talked about a lot in the preseason can really come through and shine.
Yeah, they have a decent challenge this week with Curtis Rourke, the Ohio quarterback. He pretty much did better in game 1 than he did all of last year. He had 4 touchdowns against FAU with only 11 touchdowns last year. So, I mean, it's already a big jump for him, 345 yards. So the secondary will probably get tested again, but I'm not sure they'll have as much success on the Penn State secondary as they did against Ohio or FAU's.
Yeah, let's see what I hope not, right? I mean,
you would think, but
it's just all these things. I mean, okay, so where were they? So last week they gave up 7 tackles for loss, which is not very good. I mean, so you want to see Penn State do a good job there. And then they gave up 3 sacks. So they gave up 10 combined tackles for loss and sacks against Florida Atlantic. Again, if you set the over-under for Penn State defense generating that much stuff this week and they hit the over or even hit the number, you're going to feel a lot better about them going into next week. If they came up again, in the 4 to 5 range, that's 5 negative drive-changing plays that they're not getting that they should be, and that adds up over a game.
Yeah, it does. So I think we're both going to pick Penn State to win here. I don't think that's in question. Even predicting a score for these types of games is hard because
it's too early to tell. There's too many variables that go into it, but you gotta pick something.
Yeah, I mean, I just want us to. I want the offense to clear 40. I think I'll be happy. So if they put up 45, like 45-14, 45-17.
I was going to say 45-14, as a matter of fact.
Right.
So
somewhere in there. I feel like that's a reasonable. I think Ohio will score a little, whether that's the fact that this Rourke kid actually is kind of decent now, or that the second and third team plays a lot of the fourth quarter, and maybe they score 10 points in the fourth quarter or something like that.
That could be the case, too, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of these games you have to look at the score by the end of the third quarter. Like the Villanova game last year was 38-3 at the end of the third quarter. I think you got to look at that, and then everything you see in the fourth quarter is like playing the blue and white game again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one thing too, right? You want everybody to play. But it looks like the weather's going to be really good, right? So 75 degrees at noon or so. That's a good prep for next week, because in Auburn next week it's going to be disgusting, hot and humid. So giving them the opportunity to play in a sunny, warm game, work up some cramp prevention and endurance and things like that, I think is good. So this is an excellent opportunity. I was going to say 45-14 too. Maybe I'll go 42-14.
Right.
And No, I'm sorry, 41-14, and 5 touchdowns and 2 field goals. I want to see a couple of I want to see Jake Vinegar kick a field goal before he goes into Jordan-Hare Stadium. Right?
I think they do. Obviously everybody wants them to score touchdowns, but I think it would be good if they did try, like maybe not. If the game's already out of reach, don't go for it on like a 4th and 3 from the 25. Yeah. Like, let's kick the field goal and see what we have here. I think they might do that, and they probably need to do that because they didn't kick any field goals last week.
No, and I know that sounds ridiculous that you'd rather see them get a couple of field goals than another touchdown or two. But again, like, this is not a game that we expect to be in doubt. So that unit needs experience in a real situation, right? So
yeah, for sure. So Nate has to go, but I will be back for the second half with JNELLY and Tyler. JNELLY's actually going to drop some bets, and Tyler has a drink for the first home game tailgate this Saturday for Penn State. So stay tuned for the second half.
I have a drink too. I don't know. I'm excited to hear what Tyler has to say. But
yeah, it should be a good one. All right, so we're going to say goodbye to Nate, and I'll be back in a couple. All right, and as promised, I am back with JNELLY as Nate disappears. So we got some good games this week to talk about. Maybe not as many as last week, but the most intriguing one might be Alabama and Texas, and Alabama is a -20 favorite on the road. So what do you think about that one? You think Alabama covers that?
I mean, I would probably take Bama to take it. I think they're win by 20.5 just because it's Bama. Texas is overrated. I mean, they have playmakers, but then their one transfer All-American wide receivers out for the year, Naylor or something. So I think without him, they can their DBs are so good. Like Xavier Worthy, he's good, but he's not. I don't know if he's better than Bama DBs to really like scorch them to make it close. So I'd probably take Bama 20.5. Honestly, I don't like Texas.
Yeah, I saw Nick Saban started his career 24-0 versus former assistants, and now he's 1-2 in the last 3. And of course, Steve Sarkisian was his offensive coordinator a couple years ago when they won the national championship. So we'll see. I mean, Saban overall has the numbers on those guys, but lately they're starting to catch up with them. Of course, some of that was Kirby Smart, who probably runs the second best program in the country behind Saban. So yeah, it's a little different, but we'll see what happens with that one. And then another former Saban assistant, Jimbo Fisher, he's got an interesting game because he's home against App State, an App State team who put up 61 or whatever on North Carolina last week. But they are heavy favorites at 19. So App State can score. You think A&M can cover 19, almost 3 touchdowns against a team that clearly can move?
I would definitely take the points. App State's defense is terrible. Like, they were getting torched by UNC when they were up by 21 and gave it up in 9 in like 5 minutes. So like they could easily, they'll probably lose. I'll say they lose the game, but A&M against who they play last week, their game got delayed, but they like only won by like 30. Like it wasn't like a crazy game for like a team that they were playing. They didn't impress me with all the recruits they had. So I think if App State comes out with the right mindset, they can stay close. But I doubt they'll win with that defense. It's terrible.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know, like a 42-25 game or something like that. Well, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe the most interesting game to me is that Tennessee is a 6-point favorite on the road at Pitt. Pitt coming off the ACC win championship last year. They beat West Virginia in the opener in what was a close game, but that's a rivalry game. Pitt won at Tennessee last year, and now they have Tennessee as the favorite this year. I don't know. I'm not really comfortable maybe touching the spread or that in this game. I'm more interested kind of in the over-under, which is set at 64.5 because both these teams can score. And what Pitt did have a good defense last year. It looked a little shaky against West Virginia though to start, and then Tennessee doesn't really have much of a defense if you're going off of last year. So I think the over hits. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, I think the over definitely hits, honestly. I mean, Pitt gave up 31 to a West Virginia offense that's not very good. Like,
Yeah.
JT's pretty good. Like, he's okay. I haven't really seen him play that much as he keeps transferring. And West Virginia's gotten some talent throughout the years. Like, between us and them, like, they've taken some talent away from us
Right.
for, like, wide receivers like Caden Prather or whatever his name was. I forget his last name. But
Prather,
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he was really good. So, like, they have the talent, but I just think Tennessee versus Pitt, yeah, no defense at all. Pitt doesn't really have a home field advantage. They did a lot. Not even last week. I'm pretty sure West Virginia had like over 50% of the stadium West Virginia fans. That's what I heard. So, I mean, I'll definitely take the over. Maybe the spread I'd stay away from too, because I think both teams are vulnerable. Like Tennessee is getting a lot of hype for their offense,
Yeah.
but their defense can't compete against Bama, Georgia, or anybody else that has offensive power like that. So, yeah, I'll just stay with the over. Stay away from who's going to win the game.
Yeah, I think both clear 30 easily.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is one get to like 37, another touchdown, and you got the over there. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely good with that one. And then another ranked matchup is Baylor at BYU with BYU -3, which is -3 for the home team is pretty much like the default at most
Yeah.
times. So that seems like an equally matched game. So I'm interested to see what happens there. BYU with the big offensive
Yeah.
line.
That's weird. I've been seeing a lot of people like pick BYU because it's home. They think they're
Mhm.
going to pull off the upset. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like the talent gap. BYU's offensive line is crazy, but Baylor's very good team that people aren't really talking about. So
Mhm.
I think they could go in there and make a statement by like 14, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's one where I think Baylor might be a good pick there if you want to
Yeah.
go against the grain there. And then finally, Nate and I talked about it, but what do you think about Penn State covering I think it stayed at 26, 25 and a half against Ohio with the thought that a lot of young players probably get it in the fourth quarter.
I feel like we should be fine covering. I mean, I personally, I'm not touching games this year for Penn State. I'm not betting on games. But if I was to take, I would probably take it. I think we should be up 35-0 by half. And then it would kind of
Okay.
be up to the young guys to stop them. But I still think even if we started all of our young guys, we would still win the game. We would just have the talent gaps too big.
Yeah, I think Aller could win this game if he was the starting quarterback too, but I don't
Yeah,
know if
that's true.
if they'd cover. So yeah, that's it's gonna be an interesting one there because I could see, like you said, they get out to a big lead, maybe not 35, but like 28 or something like that, and they're like, okay, let's pull these guys because we got Auburn next week, and
Yeah.
then that's when Ohio starts to creep back into the game. You know, we saw it last year with Villanova, where it was 38-3 after 3, and then they pulled Clifford and like Dotson and them, and then the final was 38-17, and that line was like 30, I think. So you
Yeah.
never know. That's you got to watch out with those games is the fact that guys get pulled and it's kind of second stringers in there, not as
Yeah, it screws you
experienced.
over.
So yeah, so I would probably stay away from that too. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I probably wouldn't touch Penn State until next week. Auburn's definitely, if they're not favored in that game, that's easy take.
yeah,
2 points.
I'll be interested to see what comes out with that game for the line. I think it'd probably be kind of like this Baylor BYU game where the home team gets the default 3. I could see that maybe being the case here,
Yeah.
depending on how Auburn looks this week. I mean, they're playing San Jose State, I think. So I don't think we're really going to learn anything.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
yeah,
It's
so
just
I
a
don't
run
know.
game.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to watch that one too. All right, so that's going to do it for this one. Thanks to Nate earlier and JNELLY here for getting us through this episode.
Yes, sir.
See you guys later.